All right. Welcome, welcome. And thank you for joining today. We're going to be talking about Mitchelle Blair, who many people in Detroit know as the Freezer Mom. So, Mitchelle Blair murdered two of her children and placed them in this freezer and put them there for, I believe it was 3 years before they were discovered um, when she was being evicted. So I'll tell us, this is going to be a very short video where I just really go through some of the basic information. There's so much about Mitchelle Blair on YouTube and on news articles for you to look into. It's a really kind of interesting case because the Mitchelle has given interviews where uh, she just says blatantly, "Yep, I did it, and here's why I did it," and yeah, it can get really gruesome. Her reasoning behind why she did it. So let's dive in. So this is an image that I took from Michelle's Facebook page. As you can see, she, obviously wanted to take a lot of time to take care of herself and her appearance, and how she looked was important to her in this image. Um, which you'll get why I'm saying that a little later. And so she was 35, and on March 24th of 2015, she was being served an eviction. So she had already been through the court process and knew that that day was the day they were coming to put her stuff out. And she knew this was happening, right? You know, when you're being evicted, as somebody who has friends who've been evicted, I've never personally been evicted, but I know that when you're being evicted, you know it's happening. You know that it's happening. So they were coming to her home, and she wasn't home that day. Instead, she was at the neighbor's house. I want to say smoking weed, I think is what they said she was doing. So she's at the neighbor's house smoking with one of, I think she had her kids with her. At the time, she had a younger son with her, and these kids who she had murdered were at home in the freezer. So the officers who go in to serve the eviction notice and go in to start putting her stuff out, right? Go in to start putting her stuff out, because if you're not home for an eviction, what they do is they knock on the door to see if anybody's there, because they have to gain entry, because pretty much an eviction means you don't own the property anymore, right? They'll give you usually about just enough time to get your most basic belongings, like things that are really valuable to you. And then, other than that, everything has to be out. And so they will bring everything you own and put it to the curb. That's how serious an eviction is, that everything you own, it's like that song, everything you own in a box to the left, it gets put out to the curb. So uh, they went through, and they're grabbing stuff, going through cabinets, I mean, it's going through drawers, packing stuff and just throwing it out. And they're really good at it. The people who they pay people to come do the eviction, and they have sheriff officers escort them, that they're getting paid for that as well, and paying the police department for that service. So they go into the freezer, and they see, wrapped in plastic, the remains of a child. And it's a deep freezer, one of those bigger freezers like the one I showed you there in that first picture here, as you can see, right? So they are like, whoa, this is, you know, this is intense. Uh, and then they keep digging, and there's a nut. And so they're kind of worried, like, where is Mitchelle? You know, uh, are they okay? And they keep digging through the freezer, and there's another body of another child, and this one's a female child. and they're well preserved, right? You could tell that they had died and been frozen. Okay. So then they see a neighbor. They knock on a neighbor's door, and the neighbor says, "Oh no, Michelle's at the other neighbor's." And so the police go over there and arrest her. And she says, "I'm sorry," or something to that effect when they're arresting her, uh, as they're arresting her. So, and the story she gives as to why she did it is unbelievable. In her head, I believe that she has been through a lot of trauma, okay? And people who, know me, and as you watch this channel, you may know that, my background is kind of in a mental health type background. I'm not a therapist or anything, but I work in that field. And so PTSD, right? It starts in that part of your brain. And so you have, your reaction, you react to things quick and you're not able to really think, you're really impulsive. So my guess is that she just reacted in the moment to a trigger, so a trauma. And so we'll go through what she says happened. So her younger son was playing with his action figure toys that he'd gotten, and he was having them lay on top of each other, playing and kind of humping each other, like humping their butts, right, to each other. They were butt humping the action figures, just, playing with the toys, I don't, boys do stuff. I have little boys, and little boys do stuff. They're little boys, And so it freaked her out to the point where she was like, "Where did you learn that? Who taught you that? Oh my gosh!" And so it freaked her out. Okay, and in her mind, she's thinking, that the little boy and the other boy share a room. Okay. So in her mind, that must mean that this boy has been molested by his brother because he's being sexualized. He's acting sexual with the dolls. And in her mind, right, that means he's been molested. So her mind went there immediately. So she took her other son to his room, right, where she begins to question him. And she's questioning him, yelling at him, beating him, starting with belts, fists. She begins to, he's saying, "No, he didn't do it. Mom, no, I didn't do it." And then the younger boy is like, "Yeah, he did do it, Mom. Yeah." And she's like, "You did it?" And he's like, "No, I didn't do it." So then she begins to pour scalding hot water on his genitals. Yeah. And bleach and stuff down his throat, and just things like that. Okay. Um, and so this little boy is 10, 11. Okay. And, mind you, she's doing this all in their bedroom. And this, it goes on for a period of days. Okay. It's not just one day. And over that course of time, too, she's putting a bag over his head, a plastic bag, and, kind of knocking him out with it by choking him to death, almost, choking him to the point of unconsciousness with this bag. And then he'll, go out and come back. And eventually he dies, from his injuries. And she doesn't really know what to do. So she puts him in the freezer, because, that's what she thinks to do in her state. She doesn't know what else to do. So then, she's still thinking in her head, she's still in her trauma brain for probably the next few weeks, I'm guessing, I don't know. But her son's behaviors, the little one's behaviors, the little young one, is still kind of got some behavior challenges. Which, I mean, you can imagine, right? You're the younger one, the one who was playing with the dolls, right? And I mean, now he's going to have some serious trauma, right? Remember, trauma starts in the back of the brain. It's like fireworks. Once it starts, it's something you remember. You'll remember the sound. You'll always remember what it sounds like, right? You'll remember it. So then she's like, "Why is he acting like this? I thought it would be over now. He's still kind of playing with the dolls weird." So maybe it wasn't just Steven. Right? So the little boy's name was Steve. Maybe it wasn't just him. Maybe my daughter was doing it too. So she's thinking, maybe my daughter's been molesting him too. So she starts questioning her daughter too. So she takes her into the room, same room, right? Starts questioning her, and it kind of repeats, right? Because the PTSD brain kicks in. It's the same routine of, did you touch him? Did this happen? And the daughter's like, no. And then she goes, asks her son, did she touch you? He says, yeah, she did. And remind you, this is a 3-year-old or something, right? And so then the girl's like, no, I didn't. And so she puts the bag over her head and the bleach down her throat, and those things repeat until you can imagine, and she's gone as well. And so she puts her in the freezer too. And then a few days pass, and she says to the 3-year-old, you know mommy's gonna have to turn herself in. um, I've killed your brother and sister. And she said the 3-year-old looked at her and said something like, I don't want you to turn yourself in, Mom. And so she said, okay, I won't. And she decided then she wasn't. And that was logical to her in that moment. So that is kind of a piece of that story, okay? The next piece, we're going to actually hear from her, and she's going to tell you in her own words her story. And you'll hear the trauma and you'll hear it. And she was abused herself. And so when somebody has trauma, they immediately go to that place of trauma sometimes for themselves. So I can imagine when she saw her son playing with the dolls that way, she was thinking about her own trauma. Maybe she played with dolls. I don't know, but things like that can happen. And sadly, 99.9% of the time, nobody would ever do this, what she did. And sadly, she is obviously mentally ill, very mentally ill. And you'll see more evidence of that later on with just her talking, and then just the state of, you can see it in the state of her home. You see the pictures of the room. This is the children's room, right? So if this is how you keep your children's room, um, and of course she probably would blame them for keeping it like that, right? But yeah, that's and for being that worried about your kids having dolls hump. I mean, they're kids. So let's hear her talk about it, and you can decide. And then, like always, this is a you decide video, and I do have a kind of a hard question that I want you to think about as a you decide question. Uh, so yeah, let's do it.
8-1, people of the state of Michigan versus Mitchelle Angela Blair. And is charged in count 1 homicide, murder, first degree premeditated. Count 2 homicide, murder, first degree premeditated. Count 3 felony murder. Count 4, felony murder. Count 5, torture. Count 6, torture. Count 7, child abuse, first degree. Count 8, child abuse, first degree. Count 9, child abuse, first degree. Count 10, child abuse, first degree. Count 11, child abuse, first degree, committed in the presence of another child. Answers for the record, please.
Good morning, Your Honor. Wyatt Harris on behalf of Mitchelle, Blair, who stands to my right.
Good morning. There's date and time set for the competency hearing. Have all parties had an opportunity to review the report?
Yeah. Defense has your also.
Okay. What's your pleasure?
On behalf of defense, we would stipulate to the report from the Forensic Center. I would indicate to the court that I spoke with Dr. Shiner, the independent psychiatrist, on May the 28th. He had indicated to me that he would be sending in a report. It's my understanding the report will be coming in on the 22nd. But as an officer of the court, he's indicated to me that the order to review competency to stay in trial, that he says that Ms. Blair is competent. She was competent to waive Miranda, and as far as criminal responsibility, based on his interview with her, he felt that she was criminally responsible.
Okay. Ms. Goldberg?
We would so stipulate on behalf of the people.
All right. The court makes a finding based on the report and evaluation of Dr. Margot Gilbert.
So this is important to know. She wants to be competent.
Is competent to stand trial. That being the case.
Your Honor, is the defense going to withdraw the request for an evaluation of criminal responsibility?
We will, Your Honor.
Okay. So order.
And if you agree that the defendant is competent we would stipulate the defendant is competent to withdraw that request.
Yes, sure.
Evaluations.
Yes.
Very well. Okay. Now, I guess it would be necessary for us to set a preliminary examination date. However, after some sidebar discussions, I understand there's some other developments.
Yeah, Your Honor, it was my understanding that you were going to have a preliminary examination date today should those reports come back and indicate that Ms. Blair was competent. I have spoken with Ms. Blair about preliminary examination. She understands her rights to a preliminary examination. However, she wishes to waive her right to this exam and be bound over to the circuit court complaint and warrant before you as an executed waiver.
What's your name, ma'am?
Mitchelle, Blair.
Please raise your right hand. You swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. You understand you have a statutory right to have a preliminary examination. By waiving the same, you'll be bound over to Wayne County 3rd Circuit Court as you stand charged with the complaint and warrant.
Yes.
You understand the nature and the purpose of a preliminary examination?
Yes.
You understand if you were to have one, the prosecution would have to establish that the crimes you're charged with in the complaint and warrant were committed in the city of Detroit if there's probable cause to believe you committed them.
Yes.
Is anyone forcing you to waive your
No.
right? Has anyone promised you anything?
No.
Are you doing so freely and voluntarily?
Yes.
Any objection from the people?
People have no objection to waiver.
Court finds the defendant's waiver is made knowingly and voluntarily, freely given. The court will therefore bind the defendant over to Wayne County 3rd Circuit Court, Criminal Division for further proceedings. The arraignment on the information, date, and time will be June 26, 2015 at 9 o'clock a.m. Is there anything else?
Nothing further.
I have a question. To my understanding, to get a trial is to get to the truth, right? I'm already saying that I did it. I'm freely giving myself and accepting life in prison. My son is worth that to me. So what I don't understand is, from what I heard today, why the prosecutors are dragging their feet. If I'm already giving myself to you, like, hey, I did this, what's the problem? You get what I'm saying? I'm not going to come back like, oh, I didn't understand my rights. I'm not a coward. You get what I'm saying? All I know is this. My son is 8 years old right now. He's going to forget a lot about me. Okay? When he look back at all this media coverage from these bottom feeders, I don't want him to see that I stood here like a coward. I did what I did, and I did what I did for my baby. Period. He going to see me standing up, taking my responsibility. I will happily do life in prison for my child. That's period. So I don't understand what other paperwork is there to do.
All right. Well, Ms. Blair, I appreciate what you just indicated to the court. These are some very serious charges and
And
very.
I understand all of them. If y'all
Give me an
seen it,
opportunity now. Give me an opportunity.
I've confessed 3 times. I'm not gonna stop saying what I did.
I
You get
understand.
what I'm saying?
I understand. These are very serious charges with very serious consequences. If you were to plead guilty to a first-degree murder charge, that is life in prison without the possibility of parole.
I know this.
Understand also that that's a very unusual position for someone to take.
What I did was unusual,
Uh,
but
yeah.
it's normal for me. Because no 8-year-old boy, he was 6 at this time, he was being raped. No. You understand what I'm saying? No. Don't nobody know what he went through. Nobody know. All y'all know is what I did. All I know is why I did it. You get what I'm saying? So it's like, unusual as it is, it's like,
Well, what I'm asking,
I'm not giving y'all the runaround. So it's like, what is taking so long? Get it?
I understand. What I'm asking though is that your next court date is going to be a week from today. I want you to take that week and think very seriously. And it sounds like you've already have your mind made up.
Yes.
But I want you to take that week and to think long and hard about the consequences of pleading guilty to a first-degree murder charge. I'm not going to say that you can't do it. Nobody's dragging their
Need a
feet.
week.
Listen to me. But we want this to be done very carefully. We want it to be done right.
Y'all got the paperwork saying I'm competent.
Yes, ma'am.
And I just told you, my son's gonna forget a lot of things about me, but he will not forget. He goes on media websites or whatever, looking back over the years. When he is old enough to understand exactly what I did, I want him to look back. He's gonna know how important he was and still is to me. I'm happily saying life in prison. If you had death penalty, I would take that. I don't care. That's my baby. Period. I'm not gonna change my mind. I'm not changing anything. I don't need the week to think about it. It's just what it is.
Let me have the parties approach you. See who responds.
Okay, so you got to see some of the hearing there for Mitchelle Blair. Also, there was some custody, or she had her parental rights terminated, of course, for her other remaining children that she had. And they have since come out. Her, at least she had an older daughter that came out later and said that living in that home was torture, which I am not surprised. When you live in the home with somebody who suffers from severe PTSD, which I'm sure that mom did, and severe trauma, and probably just generational trauma, um, it can be hard. I mean, I can imagine how hard it was for those children in that family. And so now we've got Stony and Blair, who they called Honey Bear, just beautiful. From sunrise, June 8th, 1999, to sunset. She was the second one that the mom killed and put in the freezer. And then Stephen Gage Barry, who they called Little Man. He was the first one that she thought was doing something to her little boy. And I want to say none of the allegations are proven. And I truly believe that this mom is just was in her PTSD brain, and that happens, and yeah, so yeah, and then of course the freezer that she shoved them into and left them in for years, and the neighbors, after they were evicted in the neighborhood, came and they're the ones who actually, I believe, made these two signs, or the school, I think, is actually the ones who made these the Honey Bear and Little Man signs with their handprint things. And so these are pictures of the home. This is what I wanted to show you, actually, about some signs that somebody has some severe mental illness, and maybe suffering from severe mental illnesses. when they are leaving their home in conditions like this. So this is her bathroom. So you can see it's just total disarray. Okay, just total disarray. Uh, just absolutely disgusting to live in there. This is the kitchen. Okay, it's a toothbrush on the sink in the kitchen. You can just see the cabinets. I mean, I don't know how they cooked in there and lived in there. And you might argue, oh, they were being evicted, Celeste, but no, this is disgusting. This is absolutely disgusting. And, um, you know, she had a child in there, you know, the 3 year old or whatever year old or 6 year old, whatever. Remember that she was trying to protect, he was 3 at the time or whatever that she did it. So, I mean, this is unbelievable. This is unbelievable filth. And these are the drawers. This is just them looking down on it. They just were like, this is so disgusting. That's all, I mean, they don't, I mean, this is bad. They were just like, ugh. They wanted to show the filth, you know. So this is bad. So here's Stony. Stony's the one who's standing taller. And I believe, yeah, Stony's the one who's standing taller, and that's her sister there. And like I said, one of the siblings came out and said that it was hell living with that mom, and that her mom was mentally ill. And so my kind of you decide question was going to be, uh, you know, the mom did get a life sentence, without parole. If, would you contact that mother? I can't imagine that I ever would, you know, I just can't imagine. As a true crime person, I've thought about, you know, doing some correspondence with some people to just try to get some insight. Somebody like this, I don't think I would gain much insight because of the severe mental illness, And I do believe that that is what it is with somebody like this. It's total, if you don't know a lot about like that prefrontal cortex and that absolute, like living in they call it like the lizard brain. Bruce Perry, who's an author, writes a lot about it in his book, What Happened to You. It's a great book, and that's really what I think is going on with this person. So there's their refrigerator here. I don't even know what's in that yellow bag there, to be honest. It just looks like, is that a piece of cheese down there? I don't know, to be honest. I don't know if that's what's in that measuring cup either. I mean, is that baby food? Did she have a baby? I don't know. Anyway, is that a bottle of alcohol back there? I don't know. Anyway, yeah, it's just disgusting. And that's the move the Victorian people. Like I told you, they just move your crap out and they just set it on the curb. And that's what they were doing when they found the freezer. They were like taking their crap out and just moving it to the curb. And they were picking up the freezer and moving it. And we're like, this is heavy. 2 young bodies, 60, 80-pound bodies. If you think about how much ground beef is, right? How many pounds ground beef is, it's not that many. It shouldn't weigh that much. A freezer full of meat should not be that heavy. And so I'm sure they were blown away when they opened it and were like, what the? And they had to bring the police in there and say, hey, because the police, there's not a lot of police on the scene for an eviction. There's usually like 2 cops sitting in the car in case it gets buck, in case somebody gets crazy. But I'm sure they had to call for backup after that happened. So, yeah, usually it's just the people like this that the owners of the unit or the complex if it's an apartment call. So yeah, that's interesting, right? It's just so yeah. Well, thank you for watching this with me, and I encourage you, if you want to, learn more about this case, look into it. There's so many videos. There's a video on, I think it's True Crime Daily, where they go into really deep detail, and you can watch her full confession where she goes into why she did it, and it's pretty much what I kind of explained, but she says it herself. And I would have posted it, but I've don't want to get like a copyright ding. But there's some great videos out there to watch. So they're all out there for you at your disposal. So get to watching them. And thank you for watching. And remember to like and to subscribe. And I'll try to keep posting.